Morning, morning. Wow. Good room, good sized room. I really am thankful to each one of you for giving me your time today to learn about these programs. This is going to be very collaborative. Okay, I have a lot of Q&A. Please don't sit there with alligator arms and do this, right? If you got a question, ask it. If you know the answer to one of my questions, raise your hand. Okay, I'd love to involve each one of you in these programs. You have questions, I have answers. Great question. What I want to be able to do is give you world life experiences that I've been going through. Yes.
Do you recommend people to go through the builder's lender or you as a lender?
Why would I ever recommend anybody to go through anybody other than BobMortgage?
No, they give them
So they give them incentives, and typically those incentives are at a cost. So what we have to look at is, and we do a comparative analysis, which many of people have worked with me and seen what we do. We have to compare the lender's offer at the builder versus mine. Okay, because if their rates are going to be 3/4 of a point higher or 1/2 a point higher, does that really save them money over the long term? So it all comes down to a simple question. How long do you plan on keeping the house? If this is an 18-month deal, take the cash all day long. So I got to figure out if they're going to give them $5,000 or $6,000 or $7,000, how do I make that happen? And I can do it, right? I can give them the $5,000. It's like you saying, hey, I'm not going to work for 3%, I'll work for 1%. You have that choice, right? Okay. I have the same choice as well. I don't make 3%, though. So we make about 150 basis points, which is 1.5%. So I got to do a lot more volume. But I can trade that to help pay the $5,000 or $6,000 or $8,000, depending on the loan amount, to help compete against that builder. But in some cases, if my interest rates are 1/2 a point lower and the buyer has the money, it's just educating them. At the end of the day, let's educate them and make sure it's worth it to take that incentive over a lower rate. And if it is, it is. And I'm happy for them at that point. But I want to make sure we're educating them and getting in the game. Yes, ma'am.
I have a buyer, and she probably can't make it for conventional, but she could probably definitely go FHA, or she is a former veteran. So we could do the FHA too. But she just recently became self-employed within the last 6 to 9 months in the same field that she was a W-2 for a year before. So how would that affect her?
Well, you'd have to get to a minimum 12 months, right? So we'd have to look and see, like, so we pull up the credit file, we look at it, it's going to end up probably going conventional then at that point, because that's usually FHA really wants the 2 years. But we would look at her previous employment, verify what it is, and then look at her new self-employment. She would have to be 1 year on the job or self-employed and file her tax returns. So if 1 year is going to be like September of this year, you're kind of in between tax years. So when is she going to file? Because I need that 1 year's worth of tax returns, full 1 year worth of tax returns on self-employment history. Mm-hmm. So that's fine. May push them into 18 months or something. Yes, ma'am.
With the self-employed, is it sometimes to their disadvantage, like costs and things like that as a self-employed person? And then second question is there, if someone's a W-2 but they have a self-employed type of income, do you count that in, or would you just completely exclude that and use the W-2?
Okay.
Because a lot of people are doing, multiple.
Sure. So first part, there's no disadvantage at all to being self-employed. I mean, I take the tax returns the last 2 years, average the income. Now, whatever that income shows, because you have gross income, and then you write off all your wages or all your expenses, and you're left with adjusted gross income. That's what I'm using. Now, there's some things I can add back in, like depreciation. There's certain things I'll add back into it, right? But that adjusted gross income is what I have to use. They get all the benefits of writing it off, right? It's just making sure that they leave enough money to qualify for a home loan. If they don't, then we go with bank statements, right? Because a lot of people, I've seen people that make $2 million a year and show the IRS they make no money, right? Perfectly fine. That's the beautiful thing about, the tax laws. So what do? We just go validate the deposits in the bank account, and then that's what we're using for income through the bank deposits, right?
Would that work for my buyer?
Your buyer needs 2 years self-employment history. Okay. The second part of that was
Multiple income.
multiple incomes. Yes. So,
1099.
yeah, absolutely. So we see a lot of people that come in with like Uber and Lyft income. Okay, which is perfectly fine. We just have to have 2 years self-employment history of that.
If they don't have that, though, can you just completely exclude it?
We'll exclude it.
Let's say that their W-2 is $100,000 a year, and then they're, I don't know, they bake cakes, right, or whatever. So this 1099 gig is, it's the gravy. Do you have to include that in there?
Well, if we can't include it because of the number of years that they have under their belt baking cakes, then it's going to be an exclusion. Where it could hurt you is if they've created that business to write off $85,000 of expenses. Okay, they got creative, they got smart. Even though it's only a year and a half into it or year into it, I'm going to have to carry forward that loss against that $100,000 of wage income. So we can leave it out, but if there's a significant loss, it's going to hurt them. Okay, that's a great question. Okay. Yes, sir.
This is going to come across funny, but it's a serious question. I have an agent right now in Houston that is working with a home buyer that has about 8 years of mid-six-figure self-employment, verifiable income.
Okay.
She's a stripper.
She's a dancer.
Buyer.
Yes.
The buyer is an entertainer.
She's an entertainment dancer. Okay.
And so
Well, look.
she's got several years of verifiable, but how much longer should we be able to keep doing that?
So the question was, we have a buyer that has 8 years on her job. Her job is an entertainment professional dancer.
8 years, all as pretty much as a contractor and not within, and she's self-employed.
Self-employed. Look, at the end of the day, I don't care what her job is, unless it's like smuggling drugs. I mean, that's something that, it would not allow us to be able to handle that loan, but she has chosen her employment. I'm going to look at 2 years history. I'll average the last 2 years. That's what I'm going to bank on it going forward. I mean, no difference in a real estate agent. Different paths, but hey, I don't know if your income's going to continue either. So all I got to do is just average the last 2 years and keep it going forward. I got to believe that there are going to be people that are going to continue to buy houses, just like I got to believe that there are going to be people that are going to continue to go to that establishment. Make sense?
Yeah. Well, the genesis of the question was she's sneaking up on 40. Okay? She's like 37 or 30.
If somebody, let me stop you here. If somebody comes to me and we've had this happen, somebody comes to me at 85 years old and wants to buy a home and take out a 30-year note, can I tell them no? No. Absolutely not. Okay? We've done it. Does not matter. We cannot discriminate based on age.
Okay, so here's where I'm going to go. So
maintain the mortgage.
Sure.
The probability of continued self-employment income in that field doesn't really enter into it?
It cannot.
Okay, that's what
Age cannot be a determining factor as to whether or not you give a person a loan. It all is based on that income. Yep.
I'll see if I can get your referral on that one.
Man, you're putting a hot box on that one. Thank you so much for giving me your time.
Well done, buddy.
You had a lot of questions today, huh?
I had a bunch of questions. It was really informative. I mean, it helps me just be educated to be able to speak more on the programs themselves and just even how credit reports work. So it was good to have the info beforehand.
That is good knowledge. Thank you for the class.
Oh, I love it. Bob's always great. So knowledgeable. I love his education, and you always walk away with value. So it's definitely worth the time. So I love Bob.
I wasn't aware of all the different programs, so I think it's just going to help me close more deals. It was great.
he's got a lot of good information. So I always love when Bob puts on a presentation because he's a sharp guy. So
It was one of the best classes I've ever attended. I attended last year. I don't know if they give it once a year, but I learned so much, and then this year I took away more.
Oh, I thought it was very informative. The guy really knows what he's doing. And I love the way he dresses.